Joining us with some thoughts and reaction from the World Economic Forum in Davos is Dan Yergin. He's the vice chair of S&P Global. Dan, so glad to have you here today. With all of these big changes from the U.S. policy perspective now in play, what's the biggest headline for you?
Well, I think the biggest headline, obviously, there's such a wide range of things, but in terms of energy, it's basically the enshrinement of the idea of energy dominance, which had been in the first Trump administration, as opposed to the Biden administration, which was kind of not very interested in the fact that the U.S. is now the leading supplier of oil and gas around the world.
One of our analysts, Ben Amons, thinks that there's actually a strategy here where the president's trying to finance tariffs by jawboning oil. In other words, if it's possible that tariffs go in and put upward pressure on inflation and so forth, well, it's kind of a break for the consumer. At least when you fill up at the pump, you don't feel like the inflationary effect is so bad.
Yeah, well, I think in terms of oil, what will really determine things is the balance of supply and demand. Obviously, the markets are responding to specific news, but prices have still been, kind of in the moderate range. The notion that you're going to be able to, fund the government with tariffs, I don't think they're thinking about that. But I would say here in Davos, the major focus obviously has been partly on the energy, partly in a big way on tariffs, on taxes, on what happens to the alliance system, and then off on another track about implementing AI. So those are the big headlines here. Kelly, if I can mention one other thing, there's a lot more snow today in Houston than there is in Davos.
There might be more snow in New Jersey. Well, I guess that's more expected than Houston. I didn't realize there was that much snow. So what is the reaction, Dan? When we go back to the Biden administration announcing its Inflation Reduction Act, I mean, that had massive global reverberations. Other countries were really upset about it. What's the reaction now to what President Trump has announced so far? Is he undoing what the Biden administration implemented, or does it not go that far?
Well, I think it's still unclear what will survive of the Inflation Reduction Act and what will not. Obviously, that was acted as a big magnet to bring investment into the United States. But here, I would say that the big issue is really just people kind of, what does it mean in terms of tariffs? How does this change the financial system? How does Europe respond to it? What's the trade-off here? President Trump has talked about Europe importing more oil and gas from the United States to offset the trade deficit. And then, this is kind of a global forum here. It is a global forum, and we are seeing a big change in the sort of global system, and really that's existed since the end of the Second World War.
Is it a threat or is it welcome to other countries? This idea that the U.S., on top of record oil production we're already doing, is going to do more, on top of our LNG exports that we're now going to do more. Is that perceived as a competitive threat or as an area of opportunity?
Well, I think for many people, and I've had a lot of discussions here about LNG, the fact that the U.S. is now the world's largest producer of LNG and the largest exporter is very significant. U.S. LNG has been very important to Europe's economic survival with the cessation of Russian natural gas. And I think one of the things that the president's comments have done is to bring home just what a big business LNG is. It's gone from nowhere in 2016 to being in total value in terms of exports, half of everything we export in terms of semiconductors. So this is a big business, and President Trump has been focused on LNG in his first term, and even more so given the expansion since then.
Perhaps you just said so, but do you think the LNG boom rivals the AI boom in size and impact?
No, the AI boom is something entirely different, I think. Last year here at Davos, the AI question was, what is AI? This year, it's really about how do you implement it. CFOs saying, what's the return on investment? How do you apply it in terms of productivity or in terms of operations? So the whole discussion around AI, and there's a lot of it going up and down the promenade here, is about actually what is the actual application going to be? And, and that is, in a sense, hovers over everything.
Dan, you've written about the new map. You've written a lot about how copper and these other materials will be required for the energy transition. How much is the landscape changed now, and for clean energy industries in particular, given what Trump has done, announced, and signals about kind of boosting the production of traditional fossil fuels?
Well, it's not only that, but clearly he's not a fan of renewables and conventionals, leaving the Paris Agreement, ending various types of incentives and subsidies for renewables and so forth. So he's basically saying we're going to largely bet on U.S. Oil and gas. The other thing, though, is I think we're going to see a bigger emphasis on nuclear power. And, you talked about the energy emergency. That's about two things. One, it's about permitting. And two, it's getting the infrastructure in place to support the data center and the AI boom that's coming, that data centers could be 10% of U.S. electricity by 2030. And we don't have the infrastructure in place to deliver that.